Okay, so I have five and a half essential strategies for establishing a systems approach to training, with obviously the added focus of towards that injured population. As I allude to in the article, the foundation for me for a systems approach was through Virginia High Performance. And it was, a really special opportunity for me. And I think after the fact, in this last 2 years since, I've really looked back and recognized a lot of the things that not necessarily I didn't appreciate, but the importance or significance of them for the sake of outcome, whether we're talking about development, performance, or injury restoration. So the first pillar that I want to speak to here is being a solid or a strong problem identifier. I think we often talk about or refer to being good problem solvers, which is important. But in order to be a good problem solver, you first need to be identifying the problem correctly or accurately that you are trying to solve. This is a philosophy that I took from my former boss at BHP, Alex Oliver, who had a really, really extensive history with systems and with leadership and, kind of all of these types of alignments. And when he shared this with me, this converted on the performance side or on the training side to, we have to have really meaningful diagnostics. Not that we have to have a lot of them, but we have to have meaningful ones so that we understand the criteria that we're working towards. As this relates to the systems piece, when we identify the problems correctly, we then want to put the correct component parts in place. When we put these component parts in place, we then need to determine and specify the roles or the expectations from each. A little mantra that I have on this is working off of everyone has the same standard, but expectations are individualized. With standard, we want to think about the standard as being applied to everybody from top to bottom, no matter what your role is or what your contribution is, and that everybody is going to meet these. These are the professionalism qualities, the on time, the reliable, the communicative. But on the expectation side, these are more independently applied or assigned based on what somebody's background is, based on what their role within the company or system is, and then based on what their skill set is that they can provide to the situation. And to kind of sneak in the second principle and going again hand in hand with all of that is having a very clear set of diagnostics. So if we have strength and conditioning, manual therapy, nutrition, maybe we have a physical therapist or a team doc, ATC, whatever those component parts are, we want to bring everybody to the table and make sure that among these component parts, we are working towards the same collective KPIs, training outcomes, whatever they may be. The euphemism I have here is that we want to think about it as multiple inputs aligned to a singular outcome. Having those clear diagnostics, those common outcome goals, and also importantly, speaking the same language across these different component parts. Because nutrition talk, sports science talk, and strength and conditioning talk can be very different vernaculars. So having that unification is the second and essential strategies. The third principle for me is individualization and specificity. So again, I work predominantly or pretty much exclusively at this point with injured athletes. So for me, individualization and specificity are really speaking to a few primary things. What is the training background or the context of the athlete, their training history, their injury history, their current level, all of the basic things. And then also too, what is the main injury in question? Do we have an Achilles rupture, an ACL, a shoulder, surgical repair? Those are going to then prompt specific and individualized inputs that are directly attending to getting this athlete back on the field or the court quicker or more efficiently or whatever your terminology there would be. I don't think that a generalized approach works well in a performance model or setting. I certainly don't think that it works in an injury setting. We have to be specific and individualized. The fourth principle is the principle of revision. This is actually a topic that is now recently relevant for me, as this was something that Stu McMillan was talking about in our trip in the Caymans this past weekend. And his emphasis with this was that the mastery piece of coaching, of performance, of injury restoration is getting to the point where you have multiple component parts that are doing well, but you can figure out how to come back around and kind of revise everything and then remodel or recalibrate it moving forward with the effort of, really trying to be more efficient with your work or with your team setting. The fifth and final strategy for establishing a good systems approach for injury restoration is understanding that everything works off of thresholds and scalars. With all of these different component parts, we should understand that most athletes or individuals are really going to need mostly the same things in most cases. What changes significantly from case to case is how much and how often or how frequently we are utilizing each of these different inputs. What we found at VHP was that the scaling and the thresholds for our athletes was probably the most determining factor. Almost everyone we were seeing was leaving with really, really good success and results. And although the main pieces of what they were doing were the same across the board, we did have differences in who was doing how much of each. And so for us, the takeaway was that, okay, we understand the bulk of what we need to do, but for this system to really be effective or be efficient in some cases, we need to be very precise on how much and how often, or the training parameters even within the strength setting, these things were being applied and utilized. So I think these are the 5 central things that we really need to have in mind when we're looking to put together an effective systems approach to training or injury restoration.